They say money screams, but wealth whispers. Preston Calloway, a tech mogul worth $3 billion, never learned to whisper. He thought the woman pouring his wine at New York's most exclusive restaurant was just a servant, someone he could humiliate for sport to impress his business partners. He called her names. He snapped his fingers. He tried to get her fired. But Preston made a fatal calculation. He didn't check who she was before she put on that apron. He didn't know that the waitress standing quietly by his table held the keys to his darkest financial secrets. And by the time dessert arrived, she wouldn't just serve him. She would absolutely destroy him. If you want to understand the hierarchy of New York City, you don't go to Wall Street. You go to l'Obsidienne. It was the kind of restaurant where the menu had no prices, the lighting was dim enough to hide affairs, but bright enough to catch the sparkle of diamonds, and the waiting list was effectively dead man's boots. You only got a table if a regular died or went to federal prison. Sarah Bennett adjusted the collar of her starch-white shirt in the staff locker room. She looked at herself in the mirror. At 28, she had tired eyes, dark circles carefully concealed with drugstore concealer, and hands that were dry from constantly polishing crystal. To the world, Sarah was a nobody. She was table 4's server. She was, "Excuse me, miss." She was a ghost in a waistcoat. "Sarah, you're on the gold room tonight," Lewis, the floor manager, said, sticking his head through the door. Lewis was a good man, but he lived in a perpetual state of anxiety. "We have a VIP, Preston Calloway. He requested the corner booth. He's bringing Arthur Sterling." Sarah froze while tying her apron strings. "Arthur Sterling? The CEO of Sterling Vanguard." "The same." Lewis wiped sweat from his upper lip. "Calloway is trying to close the merger of the decade tonight. He's going to be intense. He specifically asked for staff that is seen and not heard. I trust you, Sarah. You have the best poker face in the house. Just keep the wine flowing and don't let Calloway get under your skin." "I can handle bullies, Louis," Sarah said softly. "I've handled worse." She walked out onto the floor. The restaurant was a symphony of hushed conversations and clinking silverware. But the atmosphere shifted the moment the revolving doors spun. Preston Calloway entered like a hurricane, making landfall. He was in his early 40s, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than Sarah's annual rent. He had the kind of face that was handsome until he smiled, revealing a predatory glint in his eyes. He was loud. Too loud for l'Obsidienne. "I'm telling you, Arthur," Preston boomed, clapping the older, dignified man on the back. "The SEC is just a suggestion if you have the right lawyers. We're going to crush the Asian market by Q3. Arthur Sterling, a man of old money and quiet manners, looked visibly uncomfortable. "Let's discuss business at the table, Preston. Please." Sarah stood by the station, hands clasped behind her back. She watched Preston snap his fingers at the hostess. Not a wave, a literal snap. "Coat!" Preston barked, tossing his cashmere overcoat at a busboy without looking at him. "And bring us the wine list, the real one, not the tourist list." Sarah took a deep breath. She recognized the type. New money. Insecure. Desperate to prove he was the biggest animal in the jungle. She approached the table just as they sat down. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice a practiced, soothing alto. "Welcome to l'Obsidienne. I'm Sarah, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Preston didn't look up. He was busy typing on 2 different phones. "Sparkling water. Lemon. No ice. And if the bubbles are flat, I'm sending it back. Go." He waved her away like a fly. Arthur gave her an apologetic look. "I'll have the same. Thank you, my dear." "Right away," Sarah said. As she turned, she heard Preston mutter to Arthur, loud enough for her to hear. "See? That's the problem with the service industry these days. No hustle. They walk too slow. If she worked for me at Callaway Tech, I'd have fired her for being too low energy before she reached the kitchen. Sarah's grip tightened on her ordering pad. She walked to the bar, her face impassive. But inside, gears were beginning to turn. Gears that hadn't turned in a long, long time. By the time the appetizers arrived, Preston Callaway had insulted the lighting, the tablecloth thread count, and the busboy's haircut. He was putting on a show, trying to dominate the environment to prove to Arthur Sterling that he was a man of power. But Arthur wasn't impressed. He looked weary. "So, the merger," Preston said, leaning in, his elbows on the table, a faux pas at l'Obsidienne. "My books are open, Arthur. Callaway Tech is bleeding efficiency. We are lean. We are mean. We are ready to absorb your logistics division. We are still reviewing the due diligence, Preston," Arthur said cautiously. "There are discrepancies in your overseas holdings. The Cayman accounts." Preston laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Accounting errors, creative filing. Look, don't worry about the numbers. Look at the man in front of you. I am a winner. I win." Sarah approached with the wine list. She waited for a pause. "Excuse me, Mr. Callaway. Would you like to select a wine for the main course?" Preston snatched the leather-bound book from her hands. He didn't read it. He just scanned the prices. He was looking for the most expensive number, assuming price equaled taste. "Bring us the 1982 Chateau Petrus," Preston announced loudly. "And decant it. Don't shake it. I know you people tend to handle these bottles like ketchup." Sarah didn't blink. "An excellent choice, sir. However, might I suggest the 1990 Romanée Conti instead? The chef has prepared the Wagyu with a truffle reduction tonight. The Petrus is a Merlot base. It's magnificent, but a bit soft for the truffle. The Romanée Conti has the acidity and earthiness to cut through the richness. It will elevate Mr. Sterling's palate." The table went silent. Arthur Sterling looked up, eyebrows raised in genuine interest. "That is a very sophisticated suggestion." Preston's face turned a shade of blotchy red. He had been corrected. By a servant. In front of the man he was trying to impress. He slammed the wine list shut. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Preston hissed. "No, sir," Sarah said calmly. "I merely wanted to ensure." "You're a waitress," Preston cut her off, his voice dripping with venom. "You carry plates. You do not have a palate. You probably drink boxed wine in your basement apartment. Do not presume to tell me, a man who owns vineyards in Napa, what pairs with Wagyu." He turned to Arthur, forcing a smile. "Help is so arrogant these days, isn't it? They read one article in Food and Wine magazine and think they're sommeliers." He looked back at Sarah, his eyes cold. "Bring the Petrus, and if you speak again without being spoken to, I will have your job. Do you understand?" "Perfectly, sir," Sarah said. She walked away. "He's a charm, isn't he?" Louis whispered to her at the computer terminal. "He's racking up a $10,000 bill. Just survive it, Sarah." "The 82 Petrus is a mistake," Sarah murmured, punching in the order. "What?" "The 82 Petrus peaked 5 years ago. It's on the decline. It's going to taste muddy against the truffle. He's going to hate it, and he's going to blame me." "Just pour it and smile," Louis begged. Sarah went to the cellar. She retrieved the bottle, worth roughly $6,000. She treated it with reverence, cradling it like an infant. She returned to the table and presented the label to Preston. "Open it," he snapped. Sarah performed the ritual perfectly. The foil cut, the cork extraction. Silent, smooth. She poured a small taste into Preston's glass. Preston swirled it aggressively, splashing the sides. He took a gulp, not a sip, a gulp. He paused, he frowned. Then He spat the wine back into the glass. "Vinegar!" he shouted. The entire restaurant went silent. "Sir?" Sarah stepped back. "It's corked. It's garbage." Preston stood up, grabbing the bottle by the neck. "You brought me bad wine on purpose. You switched it, didn't you? You got the cheap stuff from the back and poured it into this bottle to save the good stuff for yourself." "Mr. Calloway," Sarah said, her voice hardening slightly. "I opened the bottle in front of you. The cork is in pristine condition. The wine is not corked. It is simply a vintage that requires—" "Don't you lecture me!" Preston roared. He poured the glass of $6,000 wine onto the floor, splashing Sarah's shoes. Arthur Sterling looked horrified. "Preston, sit down. You're making a scene." "I'm teaching her a lesson, Arthur. This is how you handle incompetence." Preston pointed a finger inches from Sarah's face. "Get the manager. Now. I want you fired. Tonight. Get out of my sight." Sarah looked down at the wine soaking into her shoes. She looked up at Preston Calloway. Something shifted in her posture. The slump of the tired waitress vanished. Her shoulders squared. Her chin lifted. The polite mask she had worn for 3 years at L'Obsidienne began to crack, revealing something much sharper underneath. "I will get the manager," Sarah said. The timbre of her voice changed. It was no longer the voice of a server. It was the voice of an executive. "But first, you're going to apologize for ruining my shoes." The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Even the piano player had stopped. Preston Calloway looked at her as if she had grown a second head. He blinked, processed what she said, and then let out a laugh that sounded like a car engine backfiring. "Apologize?" Preston wheezed. "To you? You're a tray carrier. You're a biological robot. I could buy this restaurant, burn it down, and build a parking lot on top of it, just to ensure you never work in this zip code again." He turned to the room, arms wide. "Does anyone else hear this? The audacity?" Lewis, the manager, came running. He was pale as a sheet. "Mr. Calloway, sir, I am so sorry. What is happening?" "Your girl here," Preston sneered, pointing at Sarah, "served me swill, insulted my guest, and just demanded an apology from me. Fire her, right now, or I tweet to my 4 million followers that L'Obsidienne serves poison." Louis turned to Sarah, desperation in his eyes. "Sarah, please, just go to the back. We'll talk about this later." "No, Louis," Sarah said. She didn't move. She stood her ground, looking down at Preston, who had sat back down, looking smug. "I'm not going to the back," Sarah continued, "and Mr. Calloway isn't going to tweet anything." "Oh?" Preston smirked, pulling out his phone. "Watch me. I'm typing it right now. Horrible service at L'Obsidienne. Waitress threatened me. Send." "Go ahead," Sarah said coolly. "But before you hit send, you might want to check your email." Preston paused, his thumb hovering over the screen. "What?" "Your email," Sarah repeated. "Specifically, the notification you should have received about 5 minutes ago from the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority regarding the freezing of your assets in the Blue Heron Shell Company." The color drained from Preston's face so fast it looked like a magic trick. He dropped his hand. "What did you say?" Arthur Sterling, who had been watching the exchange with embarrassment, suddenly sharpened his gaze. "Blue Heron?" Arthur asked, his voice low. "Preston, isn't that the subsidiary you told me didn't exist? The one I asked about during the audit?" Preston stammered. I don't know what she's talking about. She's crazy. She's a stalker." He looked at Sarah with genuine fear now. "Who are you?" Sarah took a step forward. She didn't look like a waitress anymore. She looked like a predator playing with its food. "My name is Sarah," she said. but you might know me better by the name I used when I worked for the Forensic Audit Division at the DOJ, or maybe the nickname the terrified CFOs gave me. She leaned in, matching the posture he had used earlier to intimidate her. They used to call me the Vulture, Preston, because when I showed up, it meant the carcass was about to be picked clean. Preston's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I've been retired," Sarah said, glancing at her fingernails. "I needed a break. The stress of destroying fraudulent empires was getting to me. I wanted a simple life. I just wanted to pour wine and go home. But you—" She looked him dead in the eye. "You just had to snap your fingers." Sarah turned to Arthur Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, I strongly advise you not to sign that merger deal tonight. In fact, if you check your phone, I believe you'll find a dossier I just forwarded to your personal secretary. It outlines how Mr. Calloway has been using client funds to cover his margin calls on high-risk crypto bets since last November." Preston scrambled for his phone. He was tapping frantically. "This is illegal! You hacked me! I'll have you arrested!" "I didn't hack you," Sarah said, picking up the bottle of 1982 Petrus from the table. "You connected to the restaurant's guest Wi-Fi. You didn't use a VPN. And you have the password 123 for your cloud backup. For a tech mogul, your cybersecurity is pathetic." She poured the wine into a fresh glass for herself, swirled it, and took a sip. "You were right, though," she said, savoring the taste while Preston trembled. "The 82 is past its prime, but it's still better than the prison wine you're going to be drinking." The restaurant, usually a sanctuary of polite society, had transformed into a courtroom. The diners at the surrounding tables, CEOs, fashion editors, and senators, had stopped pretending to eat. They were watching. In New York, witnessing the fall of a titan was better than theater. It was sport. Arthur Sterling was scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. His expression shifted from confusion to horror, and finally, to a cold, stony rage. "Preston," Arthur said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What is Project Icarus?" Preston Calloway, currently wiping sweat from his forehead with a silk napkin, froze. "Icarus. It's just an R&D concept, a placeholder name. It means nothing." "It doesn't look like nothing," Sarah interjected. She was leaning against the maitre d's station now, arms crossed, looking entirely at ease. "Project Icarus is the internal ledger name for the unauthorized transfer of pension funds from Calloway Tech's employee retirement accounts into offshore gambling debts, specifically debts held by a syndicate in Macau." "That's a lie!" Preston screamed, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "Arthur, she's fabricating documents. You can't believe a waitress over a billionaire." "I'm looking at the wire transfers, Preston," Arthur said, not looking up. "They are dated. They are signed with your digital key, and they match the timeline of the stock dip you claimed was due to market volatility last April." Arthur slowly placed his phone on the table. He looked at Preston like he was looking at a dead rat on a subway platform. "You tried to merge with my company," Arthur whispered. "You tried to use Sterling Vanguard's clean balance sheet to plug the hole in your pension fund before the feds found out. You were going to drag my family's legacy into a federal indictment." "Arthur, listen to me," Preston pleaded, his voice cracking. The bravado was gone, replaced by the desperate whine of a cornered animal. "It was a liquidity issue, a temporary cash flow problem. I was going to pay it back next quarter. The Asian market is going to explode." "The only thing exploding," Sarah said, stepping closer to the table, "is your career. And it's happening in about 3 minutes." Preston spun on her. You witch." How did you get this? This is corporate espionage. I will sue you. I will sue this restaurant. I will spend every penny I have to make sure you rot in a cell." Sarah laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You don't have any pennies left, Preston. That's the point." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket, a receipt she had printed from the back office terminal while he was yelling earlier. "While you were busy screaming about the wine," Sarah said, "your credit card was declined for the appetizer." Preston snatched the receipt from her hand. "Declined. Insufficient funds, frozen assets." "My banks!" Preston gasped, clutching his chest. "Why are they frozen? They can't just freeze $3 billion. "They can when the DOJ gets an anonymous tip regarding massive wire fraud and flight risk," Sarah said. "And since you announced loudly to the whole restaurant that you fly private and have accounts in the Caymans, probable cause wasn't exactly hard to establish." Preston looked around the room. He saw the faces of the other diners, people he knew, people he had golfed with. There was Jonathan Pierce, the hedge fund manager at table 6, holding up his phone, recording. There was Sylvia Gant, the editor of Vogue at table 2, whispering to her assistant. They weren't looking at him with respect anymore. They were looking at him with the specific kind of schadenfreude reserved for the arrogant who fall from grace. He was radioactive. "Fix this," Preston hissed at Sarah. He grabbed her arm, a rough, frantic grip. "You did this. Undo it. I'll pay you. How much? 5 million? 10? I have cash stashed where they can't see it. I can write you a check right now." Sarah looked down at his hand on her arm. Her expression didn't change, but the air around her seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Let go of me," she said softly. "Not until you fix this," Preston shouted, shaking her. Suddenly, a heavy hand clamped onto Preston's shoulder. It wasn't Arthur. It was Lewis, the terrified manager, followed by 2 large men from the kitchen, dishwashers who had been watching from the service door. "Mr. Calloway," Lewis said, his voice trembling but firm. "Unhand my staff. Now." Preston shoved Sarah away and straightened his jacket. "You're protecting her. She's a criminal." "She's my best employee," Lewis said. "And you are trespassing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Leave?" Preston laughed hysterically. "I'm not leaving until I get what I want. I am Preston Calloway." "Preston," Arthur Sterling said, standing up. He buttoned his suit jacket with dignified finality. "The merger is dead. My legal team will be contacting the SEC in the morning to clarify that we have no association with your firm. Do not contact me. Do not come near my office." Arthur looked at Sarah. He nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Miss Bennett. You saved me a great deal of trouble. If you ever decide to return to the corporate world, Sterling Vanguard has an opening for a chief risk officer. Name your salary." Sarah smiled, a genuine smile this time. "I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Sterling. But for now, I have a shift to finish." Arthur walked out, leaving Preston alone in the center of the restaurant. Preston stood there, shaking. The walls were closing in. He needed to leave. He needed to get to his lawyers. He turned to rush toward the exit, but the revolving doors stopped spinning. Blue and red lights flashed through the front windows, painting the elegant dining room in strobes of police emergency colors. The entry of the officers was not subtle. 2 uniformed NYPD officers and 2 men in plain suits, FBI, unmistakably, pushed through the doors of L'Obsidienne. The restaurant fell silent again. "Preston Calloway," one of the suits asked. He held up a badge. "Special Agent Miller, FBI, Financial Crimes Division." Preston backed away, knocking over a chair. "This is a mistake. My lawyer. I need to call my lawyer." "You can call him from the station," Agent Miller said, producing a pair of handcuffs. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement, And securities fraud. On what grounds? Preston shrieked as they grabbed his wrists. You have no proof. It's all hearsay. Actually, Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, they have the Blue Heron ledger. Preston stopped struggling. He looked at Sarah, who was standing by the POS terminal, holding a USB drive. You dropped your keys when you threw your coat earlier, Sarah said, holding up a sleek, black car key fob. You really shouldn't keep your encrypted ledger on a USB drive attached to your car keys, Preston, especially not when you treat the coat check staff like garbage. People tend to drop things when they're nervous. Sometimes they pick them up. Sometimes they plug them into a computer first. Preston's face went slack. The fight left his body. That drive contained everything. The bribes, the laundering, the names of the senators he paid off. It was the smoking gun, the bullet, and the body all in one. You, Preston whispered. You set me up. I served you dinner, Sarah corrected. You set yourself up the moment you decided that your net worth gave you the right to treat people like furniture. You thought because I was wearing an apron, I was invisible. You forgot that the people who serve you, the drivers, the maids, the waiters, we see everything. We hear everything. She walked over to him as the agents tightened the cuffs. She leaned in close, so only he could hear. And one more thing, Preston. Do you remember the pension fund you raided? The one from the Callaway Logistics branch in Ohio? Preston blinked, confused by the specificity. My father worked for that branch for 30 years, Sarah whispered, her eyes burning with a cold, hard justice. He lost his retirement last year. He had to sell his house. He died of a stroke 2 months later from the stress. Preston's eyes widened in recognition. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just a waitress standing up to a bully. This was an execution. I didn't come to L'Obsidian to hide, Preston, Sarah said, stepping back. I knew you ate here every Friday. I knew you always requested the corner booth. I've been working here for 6 months, just waiting for the night you brought Arthur Sterling in. I waited for you to get comfortable. I waited for you to make a mistake. She picked up the empty bottle of the 1982 Petrus. You said you wanted a lesson in competence? Sarah asked. Class dismissed. The agents hauled Preston away. As he was dragged out the door, kicking and screaming about conspiracies, the entire restaurant erupted. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a standing ovation. The hedge fund manager, Jonathan Pierce, stood up and cheered. The editor from Vogue clapped her hands over her head. The busboys, the chefs peeking out from the kitchen, Louis the manager, they were all cheering. They weren't just cheering for the fall of a billionaire. They were cheering for Sarah. They were cheering for every time they had been snapped at, yelled at, or looked down upon. Sarah stood in the center of the room, taking a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. Louis rushed over and hugged her. Sarah. My God. That was... I've never seen anything like that. Are you okay? You're fired, obviously. I mean, I can't keep a waitress who arrests the customers. But you're a legend. You're a hero. Sarah laughed, wiping a tear from her eye. I know, Louis. I quit anyway. She untied her apron. She folded it neatly and placed it on the table where Preston Calloway had sat. I think I'm done with the service industry, she said. But the story wasn't over yet. As the commotion died down and the diners returned to their meals with much more excitement than before, a man rose from a shadowed table in the far back of the room. He had been sitting alone, nursing a single glass of whiskey for 3 hours, watching the entire event unfold. He wore a suit that was expensive, but understated. He had grey hair and eyes that had seen too much. He walked toward Sarah as she was gathering her purse from the staff locker. "Miss Bennet," the man said. His voice was gravelly and authoritative. Sarah turned, defensive. "The show's over, sir. I'm leaving." "I know who you are," the man said. "I know about your time at the DOJ. I know about your father. And I saw what you did tonight." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" "My name is Elias Thorne," he said. Sarah froze. Elias Thorne wasn't just a businessman. He was a fixer, a ghost. He ran a private intelligence firm that handled problems the CIA wouldn't touch. "I have a problem," Elias said, sliding a business card into her hand. "A problem much bigger than Preston Calloway, and I need someone who can walk into a room, be invisible, and take down a monster from the inside." He looked at the apron she had left on the table. "You have a unique set of skills, Sarah. It would be a waste to let them go. I don't want a waitress. And I don't want a lawyer. I want the vulture." Sarah looked at the card. It was black with a single white phone number. "What makes you think I'm interested?" Sarah asked. "Because," Elias smiled, "Preston was just a pawn. I can give you the king." Stop Part 5 end. Do you want me to continue to Part 6? This sets up the transition from a revenge story to a high-stakes thriller conclusion. The morning after the arrest, the name Preston Calloway was no longer synonymous with innovation or wealth. It was synonymous with fraud. Sarah sat in a small diner in Queens, nursing a black coffee. On the television mounted in the corner, a news anchor was speaking in grave tones. B-roll footage showed Preston being shoved into a squad car, his expensive suit rumpled, his face a mask of shock. "Federal agents raided Calloway Tech headquarters at dawn," the reporter said. "Sources say the evidence provided by a whistleblower is irrefutable. The Securities and Exchange Commission has frozen all assets. Calloway faces up to 40 years in federal prison." Sarah watched the screen without smiling. It didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like exhaling a breath she had been holding for a year. Her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" "Miss Bennet," a familiar, dignified voice answered. It was Arthur Sterling. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Mr. Sterling." "I wanted to inform you personally," Arthur said. "Sterling Vanguard has officially acquired the logistics division of Calloway Tech, the one in Ohio, the one your father worked for." Sarah sat up straighter. "You bought it?" "We did. And as part of the restructuring, my first act was to reinstate the pension fund. We are making the retired employees whole, with interest. It's the right thing to do." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She looked out the window at the grey city street, suddenly seeing colour again. "Mr. Sterling, thank you. You have no idea what that means." "I think I do," Arthur replied gently. "You saved me from a terrible partnership, Sarah. It was the least I could do. The job offer still stands, by the way. My chief risk officer is retiring in June." "I appreciate it, Arthur," Sarah said. "But I think I have a different interview to attend." She hung up and looked at the black business card on the table. Elias Thorne. 2 hours later, Sarah stood in the lobby of a building that didn't exist on most maps. It was a grey, brutalist structure in lower Manhattan with no signage. The security guard didn't ask for her ID. He simply nodded and pressed the button for the penthouse elevator. The doors opened into a room that was less an office and more a command center. Screens covered one wall, displaying live feeds of stock markets, shipping lanes, and satellite imagery. Elias Thorne was standing by a window, looking out at the skyline. "You came," he said, not turning around. "You knew I would," Sarah replied, stepping into the room. "You did your homework on me. You knew that once I got a taste of justice again, I wouldn't be able to go back to pouring wine. Elias turned. He looked tired but sharp, like an old wolf. Preston Calloway was a symptom, Sarah. He was a greedy child playing with matches. But the people who gave him the matches? They are still out there. He walked over to a table and spread out a series of photographs. This is the consortium, Elias said. A banking cartel that funds people like Preston. They bankrupt companies for profit. They destroy towns to build server farms. They are the reason your father's pension was vulnerable in the first place. Sarah looked at the photos. She saw faces of men and women who looked untouchable. Politicians, bankers, philanthropists. Why me? Sarah asked. You have resources. You have agents. I have soldiers, Elias corrected. I have hackers. I have muscle. But I don't have a chameleon. I need someone who can wear the uniform of the invisible class, someone who can serve coffee in the boardroom and memorize the documents on the table while pouring the cream. Someone who understands that the greatest intelligence-gathering tool in the world isn't a satellite. It's being the person nobody notices. He pushed a file toward her. Target number 1, Elias said. Julian Vane, shipping magnate. He's hosting a gala in London next week. He's looking for a new personal assistant. We've already forged your credentials. Sarah ran her hand over the file. She thought about the look on Preston's face when he realized he had lost. She thought about her father. She thought about the thousands of other people who were being crushed by people in high towers. She looked up at Elias. The tired waitress was gone completely. The vulture was back. I don't want to be an assistant, Sarah said, opening the file. Vane has a weakness for art. I'll go in as an appraiser. It gets me access to his vault. Elias smiled. It was a dangerous smile. You're hired. 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax and nervous sweat. Preston Calloway sat at the defense table. He looked 20 years older. His hair was thinning, his skin sallow. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on her nose, looked down at the paperwork. Mr. Calloway, she said, the evidence against you is overwhelming. The forensic audit provided to this court outlines a pattern of greed and malice that is frankly staggering. You defrauded your investors, you stole from your employees, and you attempted to destroy the reputation of a witness to cover your tracks. Preston didn't speak. He just stared at the table. I sentence you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary. The gavel banged down, without the possibility of parole. As the bailiffs hauled him up, Preston looked toward the gallery. He was looking for someone to blame, someone to hate. His eyes scanned the crowd. He saw former business partners who refused to make eye contact. He saw angry employees. But in the back row, he saw a woman. She was wearing a trench coat and dark sunglasses. She had long, dark hair, different from the waitress he remembered, but the set of her jaw was unmistakable. Sarah Bennett. She lowered her sunglasses just an inch. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply raised a hand to her neck and tapped it twice, a silent signal. Checkmate. Preston slumped as the guards dragged him through the side door. Sarah stood up and walked out of the courthouse. The heavy oak doors swung open, and the bright sunlight of a new day hit her face. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down to reveal Elias Thorne. Is it done? He asked. It's done, Sarah said, sliding into the back seat. He's gone. Good, Elias said, handing her a tablet. Because we have work to do. The gala in London, it yielded some interesting fruit. We have a lead on the head of the consortium. Sarah looked at the tablet. A new face, a new target, a new mission. She looked out the window as the car merged into the chaotic traffic of the city. She used to be a ghost in this city, invisible and powerless. Now she was the hunter. "Where to?" the driver asked. Sarah smiled. "The airport. I have a reservation at a very exclusive restaurant in Paris. I hear the owner is laundering money for the cartels. I think he needs a lesson in customer service." The car sped off, disappearing into the concrete jungle, carrying the woman who had proven that even the smallest stone can shatter the biggest glass house. Preston Calloway was a memory. The vulture was just getting started. The champagne corks had barely settled from Sarah's victory when the reality of the legal system set in. Justice is blind, but it is not deaf to the sound of money. 3 weeks after the dramatic arrest at L'Obsidienne, Sarah was sitting in the small, cramped office of the district attorney. The adrenaline of that night had faded, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. District Attorney Marcus Hill looked exhausted. He tossed a file onto the desk between them. "He made bail," Hill said flatly. Sarah blinked, her coffee cup pausing halfway to her mouth. "Excuse me? The flight risk? The man with a dozen offshore accounts? You let him walk?" "We didn't let him do anything," Hill sighed, rubbing his temples. "His legal team is a hydra. You cut off one head, 3 more grow. They argued that the evidence on the USB drive, the drive you recovered, was obtained through an illegal search and seizure. They're claiming fruit of the poisonous tree. The judge, Judge Holloway, set bail at $50 million. Which he paid, Sarah guessed, in cash. "Within an hour," Hill confirmed. "He's out, Sarah. He's confined to his penthouse in Manhattan with an ankle monitor. But he's out, and he's angry." Sarah set her coffee down. The trembling in her hands returned, but she clenched them into fists to hide it. "So, what does this mean for the trial?" "It means it's going to be a bloodbath," Hill said. "They are going to attack the credibility of the witness. That's you. They're going to dig into your past, your father's financial history, your time at the DOJ. They're going to paint you as a disgruntled former government employee who entrapped a brilliant entrepreneur." Sarah stood up, pacing the small room. "He stole from pensioners, Marcus. He treated people like dirt." "I know that. You know that." "But the jury?" Hill pointed to the TV screen on the wall. Sarah looked. It was a news network, broadcasting an exclusive interview. Preston Calloway sat in his penthouse living room, wearing a soft sweater, looking humble and victimized. "I am being targeted by the deep state," Preston was saying to the sympathetic interviewer. "This waitress, this woman, she is an operative sent to destroy American innovation. She poured wine on me. Remember? She was aggressive. She was unstable." Sarah felt a cold pit in her stomach. He was rewriting the narrative. He was turning the villain into the victim. "He's not just going to fight the case, Sarah," Hill warned. "He's going to come for you. If you have anywhere safe to go, go there." Sarah walked out of the DA's office into the bustling New York afternoon. But the city didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a hunting ground. She didn't go to her apartment. She knew better. Instead, she checked into a cheap motel in Jersey City under a fake name. That night, her phone began to ring. Unknown numbers. Dozens of them. She answered one. "Is this the waitress?" a distorted voice rasped. "The one who likes to break expensive things." "Who is this?" Sarah demanded. "Preston sends his regards," the voice said, "and he wants you to know that the 82 Petrus wasn't the only thing that's going to be spilled." Sarah hung up. She removed the SIM card from her phone and snapped it in half. Preston wasn't just fighting for his freedom. He had activated what they called a dead man's switch in the corporate world. If he was going down, he was taking everyone with him. He had hired private investigators, dirty ones. They weren't looking for evidence. They were looking for leverage. And Sarah realized with a sinking heart that she had made a tactical error. She had humiliated a narcissist in public. He didn't want to win. He wanted to destroy her. By the following week, Sarah's face was on the cover of the tabloids. The waitress who hated wealth, inside the vendetta against Callaway Tech. Former Gov agent fired for mental instability, leads witch hunt. Preston's PR machine was a weapon of mass destruction. They leaked selective parts of her employment file from the DOJ, the parts where she had taken stress leave after her father's death. They spun it to look like she had a breakdown. They interviewed her old landlord, whom she had argued with once over a security deposit, and he described her as volatile. Sarah couldn't walk down the street without feeling eyes on her. She had been doxxed. Her address in Queens was posted on social media. Reporters camped on her stoop. Bricks were thrown through her window. She was losing. The public opinion was shifting. People loved a fall from grace, but they also loved a redemption arc, and Preston was playing the misunderstood genius card perfectly. She met Elias Thorne in a park in Brooklyn, far from the cameras. She wore a hoodie and a baseball cap. "You look like hell," Elias said, handing her a bottle of water. "They've frozen my bank accounts, Elias," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "Preston's lawyers filed a civil suit for defamation and emotional distress. They got an emergency injunction. I can't buy food. I can't pay for this motel." "He's starving you out," Elias nodded. "It's a siege tactic. He wants you to recant. If you go to the DA and say you planted the drive, or that you exaggerated the interaction, he'll drop the suit and probably give you $1 million. "I won't do it," Sarah spat. "I'd rather starve." "Good," Elias said, "because that's exactly what he expects you to do. He thinks you're desperate. He thinks you're just a waitress who got lucky." Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a plain manila envelope. "Preston made a mistake, Sarah. He's arrogant. He thinks that because he bought the media, he's safe. He's hosting a victory party this Saturday at his penthouse. He's violating the spirit of his house arrest, but he's calling it a religious gathering to get around the judge's order. His lawyers found a loophole." Sarah looked at the envelope. "A party?" "Not just a party. A meeting," Elias corrected. "The consortium isn't happy with the publicity. They are sending a representative to the penthouse to discuss liquidating the loose ends. That means Preston is going to be moving his physical assets. The ledger was digital, but the keys to the offshore vaults, the physical bearer bonds, he keeps those close. He's going to run," Sarah realized. "He's not planning to stay for the trial. He's liquidating so he can flee the country." "Exactly. And if he flees, your testimony means nothing. He wins. He lives out his days on a beach in a non-extradition country while you spend the rest of your life paying off his civil lawsuit." Sarah crumpled the water bottle in her hand. "How do we stop him? The penthouse is a fortress. Private security, biometric locks." Elias smiled, a thin, sharp line. "It is a fortress, but he's hosting a party, and a party needs staff." Sarah looked up, understanding dawning on her face. "Catering," she whispered. "The catering company is Silver Spoon Events," Elias said. "I've already hacked their scheduling system. They are short one server for the VIP room. You have a background in high-end service. You know how to pour wine. You know how to be invisible." "He knows my face," Sarah argued. "He'll recognize me instantly." "He knows Sarah Bennett, the brunette with the ponytail and the glasses," Elias said. He opened the envelope to reveal a platinum blonde wig, blue contact lenses, and a prosthetic piece that slightly altered the shape of her nose. He doesn't know Elena. Sarah touched the wig. It was a risk, a massive one. If Preston recognized her in his home, alone, with his security team, she wouldn't make it out. "Why help me, Elias?" Sarah asked. "This is dangerous for you too." "I told you," Elias said, looking at the skyline. "I hunt monsters, and Preston Calloway is about to metamorphose into something much worse if he gets on that plane." Sarah took the envelope. She took a deep breath, inhaling the cold city air. "What's the uniform?" she asked. Saturday night, the penthouse of the Calloway Tower was a monument to excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters in black tuxedos moved through the crowd of 50 hand-picked guests, Preston's inner circle, his lawyers, and the shadowy figures of the consortium. Sarah stood in the kitchen, adjusting her bow tie. The blonde wig was itchy, and the contacts made her eyes water, but looking in the reflection of the stainless steel fridge, she didn't recognize herself. She was Eleanor, a temp from the agency. "Eleanor, table 3 needs champagne," the catering manager barked. "Yes, chef," Sarah replied automatically. She picked up a tray of crystal flutes and stepped out onto the floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She kept her head down, offering drinks with a polite murmur. She scanned the room. Preston was holding court by the fireplace. He looked triumphant. He was holding a glass of scotch, laughing with a man who looked like a senator. The ankle monitor was hidden beneath his trousers. "The DA is a joke," Preston was boasting. "By Monday the charges will be dropped. And that waitress? I'm going to buy the building she lives in and evict her just for sport." Sarah's grip tightened on the tray. "Patience," she told herself. "Wait for the opening." She needed to get to his private study. That's where the safe was. That's where Elias said he would be keeping the physical bonds and the fake passports. She worked the room for an hour, blending in. She was the perfect servant, efficient, silent, anticipatory. Then she saw it. The signal. Preston checked his watch. He nodded to a large, scar-faced man by the door, the representative from the consortium. They moved toward the hallway leading to the study. "I need more ice in the study," Preston snapped at a passing busboy. Sarah intercepted. "I'll handle it, sir," she said, her voice pitched slightly higher than usual. Preston glanced at her. For a terrifying second, his eyes lingered on her face. Sarah held her breath. "Make it quick," Preston dismissed her. "And don't disturb us." "Of course, sir." Sarah grabbed a silver ice bucket. She walked toward the study, her pulse thumping in her ears. The door to the study was ajar. She didn't enter. She stopped just outside, pressing herself against the wall, listening. "The plane is ready at Teterboro," the scar-faced man was saying. "You leave at 3 a.m. The signal jammer will disable the ankle monitor for exactly 10 minutes. You have to be in the car by then." "And the bonds?" Preston asked. "In the safe. 200 million in bearer bonds. Untraceable." "Good," Preston laughed. "Let the lawyers fight over the scraps. I'll be in Dubai by breakfast. And that bitch Sarah Bennett will be left holding the bag." Sarah felt a surge of rage, but she pushed it down. She needed proof. She needed to catch him in the act of fleeing. She peered around the edge of the doorframe. Preston was walking toward a large painting on the far wall. He swung it open to reveal a steel safe. He punched in a code. Sarah memorized the finger movements. 4-8-2. 2. 9 haorts 1. He pulled out a thick black duffel bag. He opened it, revealing stacks of bonds and a stack of passports. "Ice!" Preston yelled, turning around suddenly. Sarah stepped into the room, head bowed. "Here, sir." She set the bucket on the desk. She was 3 feet away from him. "You're new," Preston said, narrowing his eyes. He wasn't looking at the ice. He was looking at her hands. Sarah's hands were rough. Worker's hands. Waitress hands. Preston grabbed her wrist. "I know these hands," he whispered. The alcohol on his breath was overpowering. He yanked her closer. He reached up and pulled at the hair near her ear. The wig shifted. Preston's eyes went wide. The arrogance vanished, replaced by pure shock. "You," he breathed. "You have a death wish." He reached for the heavy crystal ashtray on the desk, raising it to strike her. Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She dropped the Elena persona instantly. She stepped inside his guard, drove her heel into his instep, and when he doubled over, she slammed the heel of her palm into his nose. Preston stumbled back, blood spurting, dropping the ashtray. It shattered, a familiar sound. "Security!" Preston screamed, scrambling for the panic button on his desk. Sarah lunged, not for him, but for the duffel bag in the open safe. She grabbed it. The door burst open. The scar-faced man and 2 bodyguards rushed in. Sarah was trapped. Behind the desk, cornered, holding the bag of evidence that proved he was fleeing. Preston was laughing, blood streaming down his face. "You idiot! You came into my house! You're a burglar now! I can shoot you and call it self-defense!" He pulled a small pistol from the desk drawer. He pointed it at her chest. "Put the bag down, Sarah," Preston sneered. "Game over." Sarah looked at the gun. Then she looked at the ice bucket she had brought in. "I brought the ice, Preston," she said calmly. "Shut up." "But I also brought the garnish." Sarah kicked the desk, sending the ice bucket flying toward him. As he flinched, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out not a weapon, but a small remote trigger. Boom! The ice bucket, which had a false bottom loaded with flashbang magnesium powder provided by Elias, erupted in a blinding flash of white light and a deafening bang. It wasn't lethal, but in the enclosed room, it was devastating. Preston screamed, clutching his eyes. The bodyguards fired blindly, shattering the windows. Sarah didn't wait. She grabbed the duffel bag and sprinted toward the broken window. We were on the 40th floor. She didn't jump out. She swung the heavy bag at the remaining glass, shattering the pane completely, and stepped out onto the narrow maintenance ledge that ran along the building. The wind whipped her wig away, revealing her dark hair. She ran along the ledge, the sounds of shouting behind her. She reached the corner of the building where the window washer's scaffolding was docked. She jumped, landing hard on the metal grate. She hit the release lever. The platform dropped. It plummeted down the side of the building, the motor whining in protest. Above her, Preston appeared at the broken window, gun in hand, firing down into the dark. But she was already gone, descending into the night, clutching the bag that contained his freedom. 2 hours later, Preston Calloway sat in the back of his armored limousine, speeding toward Teterboro Airport. He was battered, his nose taped up, his eyes red. "Did we get the bag?" he screamed at the driver. "No, sir." She vanished. "But it doesn't matter. You have the second set of passports in the glove box. We can still make the plane." Preston exhaled. "Fine. Forget the money. I have accounts in Zurich. I just need to get out of this country. Once I'm in the air, she can't touch me." The car turned onto the private tarmac. He could see his jet, engine spinning, ready for takeoff. Freedom. The car screeched to a halt next to the stairs. Preston threw the door open and ran toward the plane. He ran up the stairs. "Go, go! Wheels up now!" he shouted to the pilot as he burst into the cabin. But the pilot wasn't in the cockpit. Sitting in one of the cream leather passenger seats, sipping a glass of water, was Arthur Sterling. And sitting opposite him was the district attorney, Marcus Hill, and standing by the cockpit door, still wearing the black catering pants and white shirt, was Sarah. Preston froze. He looked behind him. The stairs had been pulled away. "Going somewhere, Preston?" Sarah asked. She tossed the black duffel bag onto the table between them. "This is—" Preston stammered. "This is kidnapping. Get off my plane." "It's not your plane anymore, Preston," Arthur Sterling said, his voice cold. "I called the leasing company. You missed your payments this morning. Sterling Vanguard bought the debt. I own this jet now, and you are trespassing." District Attorney Hill stood up, holding a warrant, attempting to flee the jurisdiction, possession of forged travel documents, violation of bail conditions, and thanks to Miss Bennett, we have the bearer bonds you tried to smuggle out. Preston looked at Sarah. He looked at the bag. He looked at the cops swarming the tarmac outside the window. He collapsed into a chair. Sarah walked over to him. She looked down at the man who had tried to ruin her life because she didn't serve him fast enough. "You know, Preston," she said softly, "you were right about one thing." Preston looked up, tears of rage in his eyes. "What?" "I really am a terrible waitress," Sarah smiled. "I forgot to give you your check." She dropped the heavy duffel bag into his lap. "Paid in full." And that is how Preston Calloway learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Reckless arrogance is a debt that always comes due. He thought Sarah was just a waitress, a prop in his movie. He didn't realize she was the director. It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Treat everyone with respect, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. You never know who is pouring your coffee, driving your cab, or cleaning your office. They might just be the person holding the keys to your future. What do you think? Did Preston deserve 25 years, or was Sarah's revenge too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We have a new saga coming next week about a landlord who evicted a single mum, only to realize she was his new boss. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay humble.